Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing shared here should be taken as legal or medical advice, and listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client or consulting relationship. Every case is unique and laws vary by jurisdiction, so always consult with a qualified attorney or appropriate professional regarding your specific situation. Now that we've got that covered, let's get into it. Welcome to the Attorney's Resource Legal Nurse podcast. Today we have guest attorney Kevin J. Golden. Kevin Golden has been the managing partner of the Chicago office of Dudley and Lake, LLC since 2007. Dudley and Lake is a civil litigation and trial firm specializing in personal injury, wrongful death, and medical negligent cases. Kevin started his career as a Cook County State's attorney and worked as a prosecutor in the criminal division for 8 years. Kevin tried numerous felony cases to verdict. Kevin began his civil litigation practice in 2000 and has obtained multi-million-dollar verdicts and settlements throughout the state. Kevin is presently the president of the Illinois chapter of the American Board of Trial Advocates, or ABOTA. ABOTA is a national organization of civil trial lawyers comprised of an equal number of plaintiff and defense attorneys who share the common goal of preserving the right to jury trial. Kevin has been named an Illinois super lawyer and peer selected as a leading lawyer every year since 2008. Kevin is licensed as an attorney in both states, Illinois and Michigan. Welcome, Kevin. We are so happy to have you here on our podcast today. For the listeners out there, this is our second attempt. I missed the record button the first time we did this, so I am just pleased that you have joined me again to redo our conversation.
No problem, Jamie. Good afternoon to you, and it's always a pleasure to have conversations with you. So I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
I'm just happy to get into this. I am sure that the listeners would love to learn a little bit more about you. What inspired you to practice law?
My grandfather was a police officer in Denver, Colorado, and I always wanted to go into law or some type of law enforcement. So as I grew up and I ended up migrating to Chicago and going to DePaul University and then DePaul Law School, I did make a decision at a certain point to go into the law, and I went to law school. So I was always intrigued one way. I've worked in the criminal and the civil system. I've enjoyed my choice of going into the law. It's very challenging and inspiring. So that's kind of led me down the road. And I did go as a state's attorney instead of a police officer. And then I migrated into a trial attorney and transitioned that into a civil work that I do now.
That's very interesting. What do you attribute your greatest success to?
Well, I think I learned very early, and I also learned from my mother, hard work and putting the time in. And, it's actually, I was just having a conversation with my son, the younger generation, as we call it. And I know you have kids around my age too. They want quick and fast results and a lot of money. And I think, in your profession as a nurse and mine as an attorney, and I tried to explain to my son that, there was a lot of years of work of putting in the time and putting in the effort and learning the business the way you need to learn, doing trials, criminal and civil trials to get experience in trial work, that, through my career, I've just learned the more, work you put in and outwork others, you're going to see success. And I think that's very important, and it does take time, and it takes time to get trained properly and to do it properly.
It does. I agree with you. And it would be nice to have everything happen overnight. And I think our technology has led to some of that impact on our social norms and the way we look at business and the way we look at growth in our professions. And we want what others have, not really recognizing how much work goes into all of that. So, leading down that pathway, I know that we've had discussion recently about AI and the use of AI. How are you utilizing those tools to start to speed up some of that process in your work, or are you? What are you finding to be the challenges or the risks? Are you avoiding it altogether?
Well, it's kind of interesting you say that. I guess I'm aging myself and I'm an old timer. And and you're right. We in the last 5 years, and I know in medicine and in law, it's exploded. And especially what we do in researching and doing medical malpractice cases, the combination of regurgitating information or finding it. Um, I am not an AI user. I don't use it. Younger attorneys here have been using it. I guess one of the lessons I learned the hard way was recently had a medical malpractice case, and one of my experts um, was producing information to me. And since I don't use AI, my associate said to me, "Do you know this is Chat GPT, or I've not even what system they use it, just on the printout." And I had no idea it was until he brought that to my attention. Of course, I got on the phone with the expert quickly and I said, "Are you using ChatGPT to, make for your opinions?" He's like, "Well, I came to my opinions and then I put it in there and it supported it." Well, that can be very damaging. So I make sure all my experts right now, I have a conversation with them before they do that because of the technology running there. And I understand what he did. He ended up testifying at trial and he did a wonderful job. Um, but that can be used as a sword in a medical malpractice case, just like in the law. What you're seeing abundance of are lawyers getting fined, or they're getting, they're producing documents to judges that are wrong sites, wrong information, that they're not even site checking. So to me, I think it can be utilized in the right way, but I think you can still not get away from doing your legwork and your research and making sure you properly check what you're producing and where you're going, because the law, as in medicine, evolves and it changes a lot. And some computer program may not change with it or where it goes. And I think uniquely, you need to be able to read, interpret, and understand the law, because it can be interpreted. You and I might read the case and you might have an entirely different interpretation than what I do. So now you have a computerized system putting something out what they believe it is, and I don't know, would be your opinion or my opinion. So, I, you know, I'm getting close to the end of my career, I guess. Eventually, I'm going to have to deal with a little bit more, but right now I'm really not.
Right. I think AI has been around for a while. It just has not been as advanced as it is now, and it's rapidly advancing. What we learn today is not the same as what it will be tomorrow. As an expert in my own practice, it's a tool. It's a tool. That is it. It does not replace critical thinking, clinical judgment, clinical assessment. And I agree with you. At least from my professional perspective, I think we need to be careful how we're utilizing that tool. If I'm not confident
Yes.
in my own judgments and opinions as an expert, a tool that's not a human being that has not practiced in the clinical setting shouldn't tell me what that opinion is. I think we'll get to a point where it becomes something very useful. It's going to take a while to get the bugs out, and the impact on litigation could be detrimental if it is used in the wrong way. The same as the outcomes for a patient. If it's not assessed by a human being for accuracy, I agree with you 100% that we could be moving down the wrong road for patient safety as well. So, what do you think is
Yes.
the greatest challenge in your law practice?
I think the biggest challenge to my career, and like I said, regarding how I got involved with you and your organization, is medical malpractice cases are very difficult cases to prosecute and come to a conclusion. Obviously, one of the things I enjoy in my business is representing a victim or a victim's family in the sense of a tragic incident that, the person can never be replaced or the injury they have can never be turned around. But the civil justice system allows compensation. Medical malpractices are very challenging cases. I think the most challenging part I had was there's a lot of good doctors out there, and there's a ton of good doctors, as there's a ton of good lawyers, but everyone in their profession has bad. And the other thing is, just because you have a malpractice case filed against you doesn't mean you're a bad doctor. If you have a lawyer and you got a malpractice case filed, you're not a bad lawyer. You might have made a mistake. It's one situation, and it's proving negligence. But throughout the years, there's a lot of animosity between the plaintiff's bar and medical doctors. And people kind of forget sometimes is I can't file a case in Illinois and Michigan without an affidavit from a doctor telling me that there's medical negligence. I don't make that decision because I'm not a medical doctor. But I think the most difficult part of that aspect of my career was the relationships with medical doctors. I have friends that are medical doctors. There's so many in the profession that I worked at, but you still have, this animosity of the plaintiff's lawyer and the doctor and this tear between it. But, more recently, it's been better. You treat anyone else with respect as you would expect to be treated, and you get through it. So that's always been a difficult part of being a civil trial lawyer.
So we have worked together a little bit throughout the last few years. You found me as a nurse expert. I know you, and I know how that relationship is very important with the legal nurse consultant or the legal nurse expert when working on your case. But what advice would you give to others in the legal nurse profession that don't know you?
Well, I think you and your group and what you appreciate as a lawyer is, as I just said with a doctor, I'm not a nurse either. I don't know the ins and outs of nursing. You do. So what I appreciate is there's some lawyers that can push or try to influence a nurse and or doctor expert to say, oh, this is what it should be, or this happened. I don't do that. I say, here's a file. I don't even talk about a lot of the facts because you or another expert's going to know the medicine better than me. And you figure out by going through the chart what's going on, what the issue is. You might see talk to me about, oh, I think it's a post-operative bleed and there might have been something there or wherever. But I think it's important in the aspect, what you respect is, I've had nurses or doctors call me up and say, I'm sorry. I'm like, you have nothing to be sorry about. In this business, I know that if a malpractice case goes in the system, it's going to be there to 3 to 4 years. There's going to be 6 figures of investment from my law firm into that case. And the last thing I want to do is get in front of a jury with an expert that doesn't have a solid, legitimate opinion. So anytime I hire an expert or deal with experts, as you know, when I worked with you, I want an honest opinion. And I tell experts sometimes, hey, in 4 years, you're going to be on the stand testifying about that. You're going to be comfortable about that? Absolutely. I think this is what happened, and this is a deviation of the standard of care. So it's very important for that. I don't want an expert to say, what are you looking for? What do you think the negligence is? And, I'm like, you should know that.
Mhm.
I don't want an opinion because you think what I want to hear. That's going to be my time. It's going to be my client's time. And I can tell you it's easier to make a phone call to a client and say there's no case and we're not proceeding than do 4 years of litigation, go to trial and get a not guilty. That's devastating for people to go through. So you have to think through all that. And when you're hiring your expert, I always key in like, this is the person that's going to be in the courtroom in 4 years. How is this going to work out? And then you got a good expert.
Mhm. I like that. Flipping that just a little bit to your own profession, you have had a very successful career and it's not over. Thinking about the new lawyer, somebody just graduating, just passing the bar, what advice would you give to them? How do they
I think
become
this
you?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier, and especially in civil practice, plaintiff personal injury. The reality of it is if you do successful, there's going to be monetary recovery, and there's um, lawyers that you know traditionally out of law school, if you're in the top 10% of your class, you get these big firm jobs and make a lot of money right away. But not everyone is acquainted. So the first thing I would tell someone in law school that want to go the road, make sure you're doing what you want to do. And what I mean that in law, you want to do big law, you want to do insurance defense, you want to do medical malpractice defense, do you want to do plaintiff's personal injury? And whatever you choose, because listen, as you do as a nurse, you dedicate your life to it and you put a lot of time in it. And if you really don't believe in what you're doing, you're not going to go anywhere. If you're in it for because you think you're going to make a buck, or you think it's because it's going to be the easy road, you're not going to do well. And second of all, when you do choose that path that you want to do, as I said earlier, you can say whatever you want, but it's putting the hours in, putting the time in, and the effort. It's not going to come easy, and you got to be ready to take some criticism. I mean, as a trial lawyer, you know, you hear a lot, and you can take that. You got to have thick skin, but you need to take it and analyze it. And after juries, I try to talk to my jurors, and they'll be like, "Hey, and we didn't like that you did this. We didn't like that you shouldn't do that." And at first, you're like, "Oh, but then you sit down and you say, well, for the next trial, I need to work. I may agree with it where it is, and you're critiqued all the time. So you have to have thick skin. So if you want to be a trial attorney, I'd say you better be ready, and you have to have thick skin and prepared to do that.
Mhm. I think that's one of the areas that we have in common in our professions. As a registered nurse, you need to have thick skin too. You're dealing with high conflict situations the majority of the time that you are working. So, being able to navigate through that. One of the things I picked up on in that response was liking what you do. Now, in nursing, our profession, we're able to move about quite freely based on our training, our level of training. So, if we find an area of practice that isn't a great fit, it's not that difficult for us to move, which you can see as an attorney when our CVs are presented to you for expert review. We may have multiple different jobs, all related to nursing, but we've been able to move. Is that the same in the legal world? Can attorneys decide easily, this is not my area of practice once they're in and shift? That's just a curious question that I have.
No, it's kind of interesting because I was a prosecutor for 8 years, and the reality is I loved the job, but when I was making my transition, one of the things that were told to me is like you need to do it. It was 8 years in, and they going to the civil bar, be it on the defense side or plaintiff side, I was told, and it is true, you need to leave now. Because if you become 10 years, 12 years, no one's going to want to hire you because you were a prosecutor for too long. They can hire someone younger to do the same thing that you'd be doing for you. So in that aspect of it, you're correct. And then I think ultimately what we see a lot in our civil practice, not a ton, but then you go plaintiff or you go on the defense side. And there's advocates that are for their clients on the defense side, as much as there is. I'm very glad I chose. I represented victims as a prosecutor, and I represent victims as a PI lawyer. So I kind of just transitioned into what I wanted to do. However, that's not always simple. But one of the biggest problems young attorneys are having are cases are not going to trial to near as much as they used to when I started doing this in the 90s. We used to do trials all the time. And so they're not getting trial experience. And in this business, you need trial experience to maximize your case and to represent your client. The insurance company needs to know this guy knows how to try a case and he's going to go to trial. So it's hard for younger lawyers to get trial experience. So what's been happening, at least in the Chicagoland area recently, is there's a lot of lawyers that have worked in defense firms for 5 years you're going to get more opportunity to get trial experience out of that and get their base, and then they transition into plaintiff's work.
Okay.
I've been seeing more of that. It used to be defense attorneys would never come into the plaintiff's bar. but you're seeing much more of that. You don't see many plaintiffs going into the defense bar. They stay, where they're at. So to answer your question, I know with nursing you can do that. You can do it. It's just, you probably have to do it when you're younger in your career. As you transition, as you get older, you're kind of set in your ways and you're doing what you learn your profession. You learn it even though it's the same thing with defense and plaintiff, you're learning the ins outs of plaintiff's work that you're going to need. And the transition to defense would be, I think somewhat difficult.
Sure. So why would someone hire you? What services are they coming to Dudley and Lake or to Kevin Golden to receive? And then this is twofold. What sets you apart from the competitors? Why should they come to you?
Yeah, so I've been with my partners for almost 20 years now, and they've been in existence. So actually, Matt Dudley and I went to law school. Well, we knew each other in law school. We clerked at a plaintiff's personal injury firm here in Chicago. Actually, one of the best plaintiff's attorneys in Chicago. And Matt's had his business probably 30 years. We're a smaller PI firm, which traditionally when I first came out of school, all the PI firms were anywhere between 5 and 12 people. They never wanted to expand into these big firms. And the uniqueness of that is that each case that would come in, you would be assigned the case, you would work on it, be one lawyer, you would work the case up, you'd be hands-on on that case, and you continue to do that, which I think is a great policy. But the reality of what's been going on in the last few years is you're seeing these national firms. You're seeing big national firms coming into territories like Chicago and acting like they're Chicago lawyers, but they're really not, but they advertise they are. And you don't even know who's going to get your file, where it's going to end up, and who's specifically going to work on it. So I think to this day, Dudley and Lake, we've continued the tradition. I think we have 8, 10 lawyers. We have 2 offices, one up in northern suburbs and then the Chicago office. And we're small enough that when a client comes in or you're assigned the case, you're going to know the lawyer who's working on your case. And you're going to keep in communication with that lawyer. And that lawyer is going to work your case up properly. And if it has to go to trial, it's going to go to trial to maximize the value for the client. I think these national firms or these advertising firms, a lot of these advertising firms, they don't even take the case. They refer them out to other firms. So you're dealing with people who are more, I think, looking to the business end of it, and you're not going to get the hands-on and what lawyer and how well that lawyer is trained. I think some of those firms, it might be more interesting to turn your case over, to get it settled and move on to the next one. So I think that's what's unique here. And, there's some other firms in Chicago that do that and still exist, and they're the best firms for people to come to.
Okay, wonderful. So my last question for you. What is the one thing about yourself that would surprise other people to know? Something you don't readily share.
Do you mean like what I like to do, or
What you like
just
to
something about my
do,
personality?
something about you, something that, I was once a scuba diver. People don't know that, and they'd probably be
I
surprised to
didn't know
know
that.
that. So what about you would
Yeah, I
surprise
think
others to learn?
Yeah, I think this is more in a legal profession that people I grew up with would know, but I was born in Denver, I was raised in Michigan, and then I migrated to Chicago to go to college, and I've stayed here since the time. I love the outdoors. So throughout my childhood and into my adult life, I like going, I like the outdoors. And actually last summer, my wife and I like to camp. We have a pop-up camper, and we have 3 children, and throughout their growing up, we went to all the national parks. We drove our camper and stayed next to streams, Yosemite, Glacier, Smokies, and we didn't make trips to Disney World or that type of stuff. And at the time, the kids would be like, "Oh," my kids loved it, and my kids love the outdoors. So, and then last summer, my wife and I went up into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we camped it was in the fall, so it was getting cold up there. but it was beautiful. And I kind of was disappointed in myself that I grew up in Michigan. I never spent any time in the Upper Peninsula, so I'm going to return there this summer. So I guess if you met me as a trial attorney and as a lawyer, you wouldn't really know that, the types of things I like to do.
I didn't know that about you. And actually, we share a little bit of that in common. We did not take our children to Disney either. We have four. And there were 3 month-long vacations that we took with them. Now, we didn't camp. I would have never guessed that you were a camper until I learned that about you. We did the hotel hopping along the way, but for a month at a time. We would load our kids up in the car and go see one whole area of the United States. And we broke it into 3 different sections, and then up into Quebec and Ottawa and coming through Canada. Some of the best experiences with the family is to lock them in a vehicle and take off. You learn a lot about each other. So we do share that in common. Kevin, I want
Yeah, I
to
agree. And
thank,
then,
oh,
oh, no problem. I was gonna agree with you. And as you know now, those years go by fast.
they do go by fast. They absolutely do. We're on to 2 grandbabies now, so they do go by very fast. So, Kevin, I would like to thank you for joining me today on the Attorney's Resource Legal Nurse podcast. I think you have offered our listeners some very valuable information about your area of practice and some advice for legal nurse consultants, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, share it with someone in the legal medical world, and keep the conversation going. This is Jamie Gary, founder of UpVision Consulting, an attorney's resource conference, reminding you the story is always in the medical records. We'll see you on the next episode.
If you have found this episode valuable, be sure to like it, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a colleague handling medically complex cases. If you are an attorney looking for deeper medical insight to strengthen your case strategy, or you are a legal nurse ready to elevate how you support litigation, I invite you to connect with me and learn more about UpVision Consulting, LLC in the show notes, because stronger collaboration leads to stronger outcomes.